What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another edition of the Boxing Voice. Little different episode today. I'm here joined with good friend here, Blue Wire Zone. Nick, man, what's up? Veteran minimum. Just want to know more about your channel, bro. You help us put our show on every day, and I know you have yours as well. So I figured why not get you on and learn more about Veterans Minimum and more about yourself.
I love it, bro. Thank you for the honor. It's dope. You guys have turned me into a boxing fan. I got to say, all the hours of being in here when you guys are running your show, I've started to learn a lot more about boxing. I'm more of a UFC, MMA guy.
I got you.
But when you talk about casuals and people tuning into marquee fights like a Tank Ryan or maybe some of these crossover fights, you're talking to dudes like me.
So you were tuned in to the Jake Paul fight. What was it, 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I thought how he was doing all his fights made a lot of sense for him. Like the guys he was fighting that were UFC fighters,
right?
They're not exactly any good at stand-up, politely saying that. Ben Askren is like this all-world wrestler. Was
coming
always
off of hip surgery.
Yeah, but he was always known as a dude who his stand-up is very mid, right? And then when he goes and he fights Anderson Silva, it's like, yeah, Anderson Silva is probably a way better boxer than Askren is, but still there's levels to it. Like MMA boxing and actual boxing, it's two different. It's like two different worlds.
But we had seen Anderson Silva get in there with Chavez Jr., who, boxing people know Chavez Jr. was very undisciplined, had a weight issue, a drug issue, an alcohol issue, but he still beat him. Chavez Jr. was still a world champion. So I'm like, okay, when I saw Jake do that to Anderson, I'm like, all right, he's taking this shit for real. And I really thought he was gonna beat Tommy Fury. Let me tell you, I had a parlay, two-way, I had technically a two-team parlay. Badu Jack was a co-main event, and he was facing the champion, and I thought he'd win, and he did, and I had Jake by money line and dropped the ball.
Well, dude, I was pissed. I mean, it ended up saving me money, but I really wanted to bet the draw, and I couldn't find it out here in Vegas. A lot of the books don't really offer that because it is – would you call them exhibition fights, what Jake is doing?
No, it's counting towards a professional record. So what we as boxing people would use to distinguish that is something called box rec. So I think MMA has what, SureDog maybe? Or no, what's the basically the site where you go, they have everybody's records.
SureDog is one of them. Yeah.
So kind of like a SureDog, if you will. And so, yeah, if you go on BoxRec, they're being sanctioned by whatever commission. So when he fought in Arizona against Anderson, that was sanctioned by them. When he fought, where'd he fight Askren at?
Was that in New York? Did he fight any in New York?
No, I feel like he was supposed to fight Hasim Rockman Jr. in New York, and then
That's what it was.
Rockman pulled out. I'm trying to think. Where'd he fight Ass Kisser at? Was that Atlanta? I think that was the fight on Triller that they had in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, they had all the rappers come out. They kind of turned it into a whole spectacle more than just a boxing match.
Yep, they sure did. I want to say that was the one where Oscar De La Hoya may have been a bit he had a
whacked out.
Yeah, he was party favors got to him. That's all.
Hey man, so I really wanted to bet the draw in that because I don't know how you feel about this, but as a casual, it does seem sometimes that there's some matchups where maybe there's been a lot of hype behind it or it's been prolonged for so long. Like Pacquiao Mayweather, we wanted that fight 7 years before we actually got it. So me as a casual going into it, I was saying to myself, yo, the draw is 15-1. Kind of feels like they might not sabotage it. I'm not a believer of people throwing fights. I think there's too much pride in the fight game, whether you're in MMA or in boxing.
Right.
And I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a blue belt. I train over at Syndicate, and they got a lot of UFC guys coming in. And I see how hard they work. For them to take a dive at any stage, I don't buy into that stuff. So whenever that's a conversation, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. But I felt like this one had a lot of storylines going into it, and it seemed like a pretty close fight
I agree.
And I was feeling as if, damn, man, around like round 6 or 7, I'm like, yo, it's checking all the boxes for a
I know.
draw.
I totally agree,
And I was
bro.
heated, bro, because I couldn't find the draw anywhere out here. It was either Fury or Jake were the only things you
I
could bet on.
totally agree. So what we use Bovada out here because it's hard to bet boxing if you're going through one of the casinos out here. So we
Yeah.
use Bovada, but I totally agree. It did have everything written off. I felt like it was similar to that of a Canelo Triple G1, which that one was the day of my 21st. I go place $100 on the draw, 16-1, and I chose to wait the first, I don't know, 21 hours of my 21st birthday to be sober so I can watch the fight, score it, and sure enough, it hit. So
Damn.
went straight.
And then you ended up getting that 2 more times. Not a draw, but
But
yeah.
the fight, I know Ness who's not here, but Ness he bet the Wilder Fury one draw, and I think that was 20-1.
Yeah, dude, I feel like
I
man,
totally agree. There's some fights that because of the buildup, because of a lot of factors, maybe like you said, how long we've been waiting for it, the financial, like a Tank Ryan, right?
so
A
that's
Tank
one.
Ryan is a fight that I don't think goes the distance, but if it does, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a draw because there's so much financial implications on it, bro. Shit sold out already.
Right. And also this kind of checks a lot of the boxes that we were talking about. We've been wanting this fight for a while. And correct me if I'm wrong, aren't there already stipulations for a rematch potentially?
Yes, so it's a one
So
way.
isn't that a little shady also to think of a draw?
So in boxing, no. In boxing, typically, if you're the A side, the way it works is if I'm a champion and you're my mandatory, you don't get a rematch because you're my mandatory. But if I'm the A side, belt or not, there's typically a rematch clause in favor of the champion. Like all the top guys are getting rematch clauses for sure. We may not hear about it, but we probably heard of all the other things involving this fight because of how major and how big it is. You know, the catch weight, the rehydration clause, and the one-way rematch. But yeah, I would have to say that most big fights and most big fighters get one-way rematches or a rematch clause.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because I know in the UFC you don't really see that often. It's very rare, like, Chandler and Conor are going to fight in a couple of months, or probably like early 2024, because Conor still got to go through USADA, and he's looking jacked.
He is.
He's looking real swole.
He is looking
And he had this like really devastating injury, and there are some suspicions that he took PEDs and he took some of these like performance enhancers more so to recover than anything else
from that ankle injury.
But something like that there's no signs of an immediate rematch. They're not discussing it. And in the UFC, sometimes you'll see an immediate rematch if it's like a long-lasting champion. He's had 4 or 5 title defenses. Adesanya is a perfect example, 185, right? Like he was this dominant champion at 185. He fights Alex Pereira, who is his kryptonite. He beats him twice in kickboxing, and they finally fight in MMA. And then Pereira, going into the 5th round, he gets a stoppage, Pereira does in the 5th round.
I remember, yeah.
But, dude, they flashed the graphic when the 5th round starts of the live odds, and Izzy was minus 1,600.
No, he was winning the fight.
He was winning that fight comfortably. And then he gets clipped, and then, TKO stoppage in the 5th round for Pereira. But that, to me, is when you get an immediate rematch in UFC or in MMA, where it's like you've had this dominant champion. Another one that we're going to have next weekend, I don't know when this is being dropped, but Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman.
So I wanted to ask you that fight specifically, bro, because I'm at McCarran down the street, and I'm picking a friend up, and I'm like putting their bags, pick them up. I'm putting their bags in my trunk, and I'm looking. I'm like, yo, I'm pretty sure that's Kamaru. And his, the back's turned to me. He kind of turned back around and keeps walking. So he walks past me, and I kind of give him a head nod. He gives me a head nod. I'm like, good luck this weekend, champ. He's like, appreciate it. I'm like, mind if we get a picture? He's like, come on, let's do it. And, bro, he was Bro, Leon didn't even seem like he had any confidence in himself going into that 5th round. Even in
Yeah.
the 4th round, his corner, let me tell you, that corner, phenomenal job. Because the way they fucking put belief into Leon, he didn't have it in him. They had to put belief into him, and he came out. I'm sure Kamaru had to be minus 1,000 or more on the live odds going into that last round.
He was another one similar to Adesanya where they flashed a graphic and he was north of minus 1,000, minus 1,200 around there. And with a minute left, Leon throws the head kick. And then, the rest is history. Now they're fighting for a third time. But it brings up an interesting point, man, because you mentioned about the corner work. How do you feel about corners when you're watching a boxing fight and they'll flash to the corner and they'll be giving them advice and you feel like it's the wrong advice? Like maybe it's misleading. They're telling them like, yo, we're up. And you're saying to yourself, y'all ain't up. Because that's
Yeah. So it just depends on the corner, right? Because I've seen that on occasion, and it's kind of like one of those eyebrow raising moments. Like, what are you talking about? And in other instances, like there's been times where the trainer stops the fight, and I'm like, yo, he was still good to continue, but you got to realize these trainers in these corners, they're with their fighters day in day out. Nobody knows them better than them. Uh,
But you know what, man? I don't have a problem with that, dude. Like, I know that a lot of corners sometimes will get some heat, but you're there to protect your fighter. And yeah, this idea of like, I want to go out on my shield, not when you still have like a career ahead of you, right? If you're 38, 39, and maybe your corner knows that, yo, this is like my last fight, or I got one more in me.
right.
There, let him go out on a shield. But if you got a dude like, go back to Adesanya and Pereira, for example, that was a very questionable stoppage to a lot of people. But to me, it was like, yo, that's a great stoppage, dude. Adesanya's up against the cage. He's being teed off, eats like 19 straight punches and knees, and his head is down and he's wobbly. And it's like the lights are on, but no one's home. It's like, bro, why do I need to see my guy get absolutely flatlined
Right.
in order for it to be a good stoppage?
Okay. So let me ask you, Wilder Fury 2. Did you think, because obviously that was the big thing, Wilder was extremely upset that his corner threw in the towel. He fired the coach that did that. Even at one point accused him of spiking his water. Did you think that fight was stopped too early, or was that one that you're like, nah, it should have been stopped. It got stopped at the right time?
I had no issue with that one, man. And that was one of the fights that I definitely tuned into because there was a lot of build up to it and two like iconic names in the fight game, in my opinion, at least as a casual. And that one was fine, dude. Because again, Wilder was just not defending himself the right way. Like he checked, I keep saying like checked all the boxes. That's a big thing in like my vernacular. It's like he checked all the boxes of a guy that didn't want to be there, bro. And when they throw the towel, I thought that was the right move.
Did you watch the first fight?
Well, the first fight was also interesting because Tyson kind of dominates that whole fight, but then gets dropped too. So like that's always weird with the scoring. Also, like I know sometimes you'll see it in like in the UFC. It's all right. You're dominating 4.5 minutes of the fight, right? You've hit me. You've outstruck me 48-13. But with 30 seconds left, I catch you with an elbow, drop you. I end the round on top. Who won the round? You've been cruising.
It's one of those things, right? Especially in the UFC, it's harder because the round is longer, 5-minute round
Right.
versus a 3-minute in boxing for men, 2-minute for women, right? So I think it's harder to in the UFC to really stampede your case because, bro, if I did shit 3 minutes ago, am I really going to remember? Or am I going to remember the last 30 seconds, 60 seconds of the round when you were up against the cage being teed off on or, whatever the case may be? But the reason I asked about the first fight, which did have those 2 knockdowns, that scoring was quite interesting. And I'm going to be honest with you. I vividly remember, because I was at that fight, Staples Center. And I vividly remember getting up out my seat before they read the scorecards. I'm like, I'm going to start, not necessarily heading to the doors, but I didn't want to be around so many people because I'm like, something's coming. I promise you, I'm like, something's coming. So I remember heading up to basically the concourse of the Staples Center, and I'm like, I'm going to stand right here, and I'm gonna see the scorecards be read from here because I felt like something was coming. But it kind of goes back to, I guess I felt like something was coming because of what you said. It checked all the boxes, without even me knowing. But I knew, I'm like, yo, this is one of those fights. This is one of those fights. This is a Mayweather. I'm not Mayweather. I'm sorry, a Canelo Triple G fight,
Mm.
and it played out that way. But I wanted to ask you because,
Hold on, I want to stay with
go
that
ahead.
thought because you brought up like the scorecards and also like judging. There's always a conversation about judging in MMA. How sometimes, bro, like I feel like I know the fight game for MMA really well, and when you're watching a boxing fight and you hear some of these scorecards, you consume a lot of boxing. I know you consume a lot of boxing. I hear you talk about it all the time. Don't you feel insulted sometimes when you hear some of these scorecards and you're like, yo, bro, there's no way. Like, come on, you're insulting my intelligence as a fan. Not bias aside, not no. Oh, I bet on this fighter, he should have won. Like, there's times where I'm watching.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So look, I'm gonna tell you a perfect example, and I don't know if it's like this in the UFC because I don't cover UFC, so I can only speak on boxing. But bro, any fight week here in Vegas, the night before the fight, we just walk through the MGM or walk through Mandalay Bay, whoever the host hotel is. You'll see the promoter with the refs, with the judges at dinner. You get what I'm saying? Like you see it all the time.
That's shady,
I
bro.
shit you fucking not. You see it all the time. But then, like, you think that way, and I think that way sometimes. But then it's like I go have dinner with some of these refs and some of these judges, and it's like, am I trying to get them for us to be their favorite boxing show? You know what I'm saying? So it's like one of those things, but the perspective does make it seem quite shady. There was this big fight here in Vegas during the pandemic, and it was for undisputed. And the guy I really felt was gonna win was from Scotland, and he comes to Vegas, fights the Mexican American, drops his ass twice. I thought he won like 8 rounds to 4, plus the 2 knockdowns. I'm like, he got this shit in the bag. And had he not got those 2 knockdowns, it would have been a draw. And I'm like, so four, I saw it like 9 rounds to 3, 8 rounds to 4. How'd you guys see it 6 rounds to 6? So we do see it all the time, man. And although I may feel like I know more, it's kind of one of those things that not so much I accept it. I just know it's part of the game. And it's like, it doesn't even surprise me anymore, sadly.
Yeah, that could be the right answer where you just expect it. You kind of expect some fuckery to go down always when it comes to judges.
But see, and this is what I think part of the problem is, right? And I brought up Dog earlier. So on BoxRec, if I type in Floyd Mayweather, who turned pro in 1996, the judges and the ref in that fight, there's at least 2 of the 4 individuals still active doing the same thing today. Well, it was 26 years ago. I was born in 96.
Damn.
I done had 2 sets of teeth. I done had hair, and I no longer have it. Like, you know what? You know how much shit didn't happen since 96? So it's like, yo, we need fresher bodies.
Yeah. Do you think there should be more judges? Because I've always had this debate that we shouldn't have 3 judges. I think 5 would be better because you get more opinions, you get more eyes, and I think it's still an odd number. So you're gonna have a definitive winner one way or another. I've always thought like, why not just add more judges? Because some of the scorecards that you'll see in UFC and even in boxing too, like, and I don't know if you could think of a fight off the top of your head, but dude, I remember a fight in the UFC where one judge gave it 50-45 in a main event, and then the other judge gave it 50-45 the other way. And I was like, bro, we're talking about
The
top level main event, big stage.
that can't be happening.
You can't have it be that drastic. I'll give it to you, bro. If I see it 50-45 and you're like, yo, you know what, man? I saw it 48-47. Same fighter. I have no issue with that. What drives me crazy is when it's 49-46 for A fighter, and then you have it 50-45 for B fighter. That is where I'm like, yo, this needs to be investigated.
I've had some UFC fights like that, right? So I'm a casual UFC fan. My first UFC was 196, so the first Conor and Nate, and bro, since then, I think that was like 2016, maybe 2016, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Bro, since then, I've seen so many fights, and there's been some that I look to my friends. I'm like, bro, I know this is your thing. Like, am I tripping or was it not this way? Because I'm like, I'm the casual, so I'm not supposed to know that much. But what I just saw is not what the fuck that judge saw. I think the ultimate solution in both MMA and in boxing is truly to have remote judges. The
Huh.
best view, the best view for the fight is on TV. I don't. I've never been to a UFC fight, and I'm willing to argue that the best view for UFC fights at home, because I know the best view for a boxing fights at home. I don't go to the fights because, oh, I'm gonna get the closer view because I'm ringside. It's the atmosphere, the environment,
Yeah.
bro. I'm not going because it's a good view. I feel like that for all sporting events. Truly,
I was just at UFC 285, John Jones coming back, and there are instances throughout the night where you're looking up at the jumbotron because you in the UFC you also have it's an octagon, so you have those 8 different pillars
absolutely.
that you got to kind of sneak.
Plus the actual cage.
Yeah, plus the cage, and then you got the cameraman in front of it too. So you are right. That's you know what? I never thought of it that way, man. The best view is definitely from home, but also like the atmosphere, the aura of it is.
And that's another problem, right? Is the atmosphere. Some of these judges get swayed.
Oh, for
I've never
sure.
been to a UFC fight, but brother, if there is a fight that in boxing that has a Mexican fighter, a British fighter, yo, those fans come out. They come out and they're gonna come out strong, and they're coming out to support their guy. So sometimes that crowd noise, I feel
It's
like
gonna influence.
sways.
Yeah. Well,
I've
do you think this happens also in the fight game where the perception of one fighter being so untouchable, or you just assume this guy is better than the other, right? Like we were talking before we started recording, and we could kind of use this as an example. Tank and Ryan, right? Everyone that I know that understands boxing and they know boxing the way I know MMA, you and Nestor, when you guys come in here, everyone's been like, yo, it's Tank, like no question, right? So say Tank in this fight struggles. Yeah, he wins the fight, but Ryan impresses you. He takes that left hook multiple times and he doesn't get dropped. Does the perception of Tank sway that decision towards Ryan?
mm,
Does it happen in boxing? Because it's happened in the UFC where you have, oh, this guy's minus. And I know the judges probably don't look at this, but this guy's minus 300. And he just, I think the other guy won. It's going to the judges now. And the perception of it changes.
I think it does happen in boxing, but you got to think about it. Your championship fights 5 rounds, ours are 12,
Mm,
10 for the women. So I think a lot of times we'll see in situations like you're speaking of, what you'll have is a one-sided fight, and it's like, oh shit, he didn't get his ass whooped as bad that round. Let's give
yeah.
him that round. And it's like in boxing, I'll be like, yo, he didn't really win that round. He just didn't do as bad. But it's like, all right, it's only one round, so it's not too much. I don't know that we've had too many instances where it completely sways the fight. But that's again, I think you put the judges in a room, in the arena. You keep them in the arena, but you have them in a room, and they can't hear none of the noise. They can't be swayed, and they get the monitors. Like, they've started to implement replays in certain states in boxing. I think that's something that should be a part of it. We've seen it now be implemented in baseball, which I think baseball is the most unregulated major sport that there is, in the sense of, and not that it's unregulated, but in the sense of, you ain't playing on the same field every game. You get what I'm saying? This stadium may have certain rules that this stadium doesn't have, right? Versus an NFL game, you get the same 100 yards by whatever, 52.
Right, right, right. Like right field is 380 feet,
Exactly.
but somewhere else it's 355.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So, there's been people who say about baseball, oh, it should be regulated the same, this, that, and the third. And even they've adapted to replays and stuff like that. And we see it in the NFL. They have like a command center. They go to New York. All right, let's see the replay. What's the call? Whatever. Bro, boxing and MMA need that. that cage is in the way. You're only getting one view. So if I'm on the opposite side of the cage and I'm a judge, and you're over there on the other end of the cage on top, look, perfect example, John Jones. I was watching TV. I didn't even know the motherfucker had the lock in there.
Yeah.
I didn't think he had it under.
Yeah, don't worry. We were in the arena. We had pretty good seats. We were able to look through the cage. We were like in that lower bowl in the front
Okay.
row, but I had a direct view of where he had Cyril gone. And you see him throw the punch and then he gets under and then he taps. And I was like, yo, I was hyped because I bet John Jones. I was like, yo, what do you submit him to? I do jujitsu. I was like, what do you do to him? I couldn't understand. So you're right. Also, like the perception of it, of how far it is. It's interesting, man, because especially like in MMA, you have a lot of, we call it lay and pray, where a guy will just shoot a takedown, especially if he has such a disadvantage on the feet. The only way he could win this fight is lay and pray.
Right.
He'll get a takedown. He'll just grind out top control, ground control, the whole nine. It's like, well, did you really do much? But a lot of times, a lot of these judges are boxing judges now into MMA. And that's that's a different can of worms that we can open up where that don't make any sense to me too. Like it's the same, a lot of the scoring in MMA has a boxing background to it, and it's like two completely different sports.
But then the question comes, where do you get the MMA judges from? Because I feel like that's an issue with boxing. Is like Nestor says, and he said it here at the Win. He's like, yo, we need boxing in high schools. And I'm like, bro, we don't even have enough boxing for the amateur system. Now we're gonna have it for every school. So how would it work for MMA? Where do you get the judges from?
That's the big debate because you can't have former fighters because there's gonna be a bias towards, oh, yo, he was in my camp, he's from my hometown, I trained with him, so you're gonna have that bias. That's why you'll see a lot of times Daniel Cormier, he gets a lot of shit on UFC pay-per-views or UFC cards when he's commentating on a fight where one of his fighters is like his boy. Like he'll just be commenting. It's a bias, bro. Like, yo, we're human in the end of the day, right? And I know it sounds so cliche, but like that's my boy. If I was a commentator and you went to do a fight and I know you, I'd probably have a little, devastating right hook by Danny. Even though it wasn't, I'd sell it a little bit more. So the perception of that changes too. So it's a conversation that the solution is always like, let's get MMA judges in there. But then you ask that question and I don't have the answer because the only one I can think of is, all right, you get former fighters, you get former coaches, you get former trainers, but then there's going to be that in-house bias towards a guy that you brought in for a camp and he helped your boy win the title. Or
I think it's even simpler than that, bro. Before you even make it that far, it's like I was making X amount of dollars for the UFC. How much are they going to pay me to judge? How many fights are on a UFC card? You got about 12 fights, 14 fights.
So you're saying to take me away from coaching.
Bro, even if you're retired, right? Even if you're a retired fighter, it's like you try to get them in there because that's what Ness says. He's like, oh, these retired fighters, a lot of them, they don't have the money. And it's like, yeah, they don't, but are they going to take the $300 that or $500 or $1,000 that the next individual took? Who knows, right? Who really knows? But then if they do, you come across that issue.
Yeah.
Oh, well, he was part of this camp and we worked with this guy before. Oh, well, he was a stand-up fighter. So even if we weren't in the same camp, oh, this guy's a stand-up. He has good stand-up game. I prefer that over the ground game. So I feel like you run into all those issues. I just think it's proper education. I think it's proper education more than anything. I think that, it's like a driver's license. Once you start increasing your age, you got to go more often to get that driver's license renewed. And it's like there's, in boxing, there's education in place under certain commissions. There needs to be that across the board, more education. And then you need to be able to show that you're proficient enough to keep doing it at that top level. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the Mayweather-Canelo fight, but, bro, that shit was 10 years ago. The judge that scored that a draw, I gave Canelo 2 rounds. He was my favorite fighter at the time. Still is. It was my 2 favorite fighters. I gave Canelo 2 rounds. How'd you give him 6?
That's what I was talking about before, where sometimes I feel like it insults my intelligence
So
when it's that off.
see, and yo, it's gonna sound bad, but it's like the individual, the judge who scored that, it's like they've been in the commission for so long. Husband's a ref, the daughter's like an inspector, and it's like, bro, they got, they got their time in, and it's like, nah, you shouldn't be judging anymore. I'm not saying you're a bad person or anything like that. It's just for whatever reason, you're just not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Bro, then they give this individual a shot like 6 years later. They do it again. Their
Mm.
first big op. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm sure it's like that in the UFC because I've seen fights. I'm like, how was that not and it's bad. So there needs to be education in place and we need to hold these people accountable.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the main thing for me, man. You got to hold them accountable when they have some of these scorecards and these decisions, because they're also like, I had one of my really good friends, Jared Gordon. He fights at 155 in the UFC. He fought Patty Pimblett, Patty the Batty, in the December
Mhm.
card in Vegas. And bro, it's the only time in my life, and I know this is gonna sound crazy because he's like one of my really good friends, and we grew up together back in Queens. It's the only time in my life, Danny, that the entire MMA community on Twitter and everyone in the arena scored it for Jared. Like, no one to this day has given the fight to Patty, and Patty ends up winning the decision.
Mm.
And he wins 29-28. And I was just saying to myself, I was like, bro, there's no way. Like, and I was asking a lot of people that were with me, and I was talking to some of the guys at Syndicate after. I was like, yo, talk to me. Am I being irrational? Am I being like, do I got my goggles on for the homie and I'm not seeing it? And then I went to Twitter and everyone was saying the same thing. And then, yo, like, let's not forget, this is also is prize fighting. There's a purse if you win. So you miss out on your win purse when it gets taken from you. So I feel like when it's a questionable decision, something needs to be had in either of the sports where, bro, you got to be punished, dude. Because if I'm a fighter and my win bonus is $1 million and you give me this outrageous scorecard that cost me the fight, and the consensus is that, yo, Danny's on some shit. Why did he not score it for Nick? I feel like you should get hit. I'm not saying for you to pay the whole fine, but like there should be something,
No,
bro, because I just lost out on money.
there definitely should be something, and that's something that the UFC does that boxing doesn't. The win bonuses. So
Yeah.
obviously, there's I feel like an even bigger loss in the
Oh,
UFC.
so there isn't in boxing. Oh, so if you're making 5 mil, you're making 5
You
mil.
making five, you making five, champ.
And that's why the bag is so much bigger there.
Yo, I know you cover other sports, but we've been talking so much UFC. I gotta ask because this was an argument that I was having a lot, maybe 5 years ago, and it was the way fighters are being paid in the UFC. It
Mm.
seems like not many guys, at least then, were really making that much. And it was like if you were making $1 million, you had to be a pay-per-view star.
Yeah.
Is it still like that?
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely improved, but it's still, you're talking about of a 600 man and woman roster in the UFC, bro, less than 1% probably are getting like 7-figure paydays as pay-per-view guys. And even like
So
you'll
you're
see,
saying you're saying maybe a handful or two of people are getting.
yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And yo, you'd be a good case study for this too. Like the guys that would make you tune in, those are the guys that are getting the money. Connor, Anomaly. He's outgrown the UFC. Like he's surpassed that. I think there's a handful of athletes that have surpassed their sport, him being one of them.
Well, just curious, who are some other current ones?
I would say current, I would say Messi and Ronaldo. I think they've outgrown soccer. Like they're bigger. They're the two most followed people on the planet, like across all social media. In football in the NFL, I'd probably say Brady, because Brady also dated, he was married to Giselle. Right. Like I'm Greek, so my family in Greece knew Brady as Giselle's husband because
Get the fuck out of here.
bro. Because like the NFL isn't that popular in Europe. Like it's improved, but it's still not. It's the American football, but they knew Giselle because she was the #1 supermodel in the world and Victoria's Secret, and she's on all, Calvin Klein or wherever else she was. So I would say Brady, he's kind of surpassed the NFL also. And then in the NBA, I'd probably say Jordan. Jordan definitely surpassed like the game of basketball.
What about LeBron?
Yeah, he's still playing. I think eventually he will. You know, if he becomes an owner, like he wants to buy a team and whatnot. But to circle back to the conversation about the UFC, the guys that make the big money are the guys that would make you stop your Saturday night and go and watch them. Adesanya is another one. Habib was another one. You know, Francis Ngannou, John Jones. Like, it's very rare that you get those guys. Ronda Rousey, if you want to transition over to the
Bro,
women's
I
side
used
of
to
it.
watch all of Ronda's fights.
Dude, all around it. Yeah, she's like, in my opinion, she's on the Mount Rushmore of the UFC. And even if she was ahead of her time, which a lot of people make that argument, what she did for women's MMA and even the UFC, she had the famous quote where a reporter asked her about gender pay. And she's like, I make the most money because I'm the biggest draw. It's not because Lorenzo, the Fertitta brothers, and Dana want to do something nice for the ladies. That's what she said. She's like, no, I put asses in seats. That's why she was making the money she was making. But when it comes to fighter pay, it's a small group, dude. It still is. Like now maybe the guy making his debut is making more than what he once was. But you see it, dude. They make the $50,000 bonus on like a fight night if they get a bonus after. And they're crying. They're like, yo, I can not work at Home Depot anymore. I don't got to be a teacher or anything.
Right. No, for sure, man. It's crazy because in boxing, I remember having this argument. I was in Afghanistan with a supervisor, and he's like, UFC, real fighting, real. And I'm like, bro, like, poor guys, you know, they got to work part-time jobs and shit. And maybe I was exaggerating a bit, but I'm like, you name me who's making $1 million, and I'll name you somebody in boxing who's making the same non-pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Non-pay-per-view.
Yeah, that's wild, bro.
That's why you have no boxer wants to go to the UFC for what? How many UFC fighters want to come into boxing?
Oh, without a doubt, man. And I think that's the biggest interest, right? Like the bottom line in the end of the day, that's what's going to make them go over. And you're seeing like Francis Ngannou who wants the Tyson Fury fight because they'll get paid. We saw Conor do that with Floyd. And then even Askren, Ben Askren said he made more money in that Jake Paul fight when he's not a boxer at all than he made fighting MMA. And he even got into the UFC also. So it's fascinating, man. But I will say the one thing that I hate about boxing the most is y'all got a lot of champions in the same weight class. And it's hard to be able to spotlight who the welterweight champ is or who the heavyweight champ is when you have all these belts.
Well, here's the thing, right? And when people bring that up, and I agree, to an extent, but bro, it's the same shit in MMA. There's the UFC, there's Bellator, there's what else is there?
One FC. Yeah, but I will say that when you look at the heavyweight champion now in MMA, you think of John Jones. Like I think the UFC, because it is sort of a league of its own, right? Like these are all other leagues. It is. And the UFC champion will always be the main champion. Even though there's a bunch of dudes in Bellator that could beat the champion, it's always going to look like it's not the NFL, right?
No, I hear you, but it's like, I remember, man, maybe like 2 years ago, they were saying the best fight for Amanda Nunes was like Kayla Harrison.
Right.
And it's like, we're not going to see the Kayla Harrison fight because she's not with the UFC.
Right.
And Demetrius Johnson, he was a pound-for-pound star when they let his ass go.
Yeah.
You know,
for Ben Askren, too, we've been talking about him. That was the trade that they made.
You fucking let your heavyweight champ just go, you know? And I'm going to be honest with you, like, I'm one of those people, it's like you knew what you were signing up for, but, bro, we've been hearing about it since before I started watching UFC. It's like these guys are tired of not being able to make money. It's like, can I get a sponsorship? Can I get anything? And it's like, I don't know. It seems like Dana, he seems to believe like he's taking care of the guys, but I think that's why we see so many belts in boxing is because like people want to profit the most. So if I'm a world champion, I can make more money, and you know that's kind of the same shit with the UFC and Bellator. Obviously, the UFC champs are took more serious and on a higher note. And I feel like it's like that in boxing with certain belts. But it's certain.
So what would you say is like the main, what belt would you tell someone like me that, yo, if this guy has this belt, he's the guy?
Before I would say the WBC.
You see, I even know that one. The WBC is the one that I'm familiar with.
I might have even told you the Ring magazine. Even though it's a fucking magazine, it would only be given to like the guy, the lineal champ, the guy in the division. But now it's like, what is Tank and Ryan fighting for? And that's the biggest fight in the sport happening right now.
What are they fighting for?
Shit, a lot of fucking money.
Really? So there's no belts? No way. That's news to me. I had no idea. I
Yeah.
thought they were fighting for like.
No, Javante has the WBA regular at 135, but the fight's at 136. They're fighting at a catch weight. They're fighting with a, which if it would have been within the weight class, a catch weight would have been fine and the title would have been on the line. But yeah, no title. They're not fighting for anything.
Damn, so they're just fighting because the people want it? And I mean, the money's right too.
They're stars in their own right. I think that's the biggest fight in the sport. I don't think there's a fight that happens this year that can access more people than that one right there.
I would agree with you because I'm tuning into that fight. Like because it's two household names. Like them two guys, Ryan Garcia and Tank, them two are guys that like I go on my way to. If I'm not watching them actually fight, I'm making sure I'm following it, or like I gotta see the highlights. I gotta see what happened. And I would agree with you that they're megastars. And it's weird though, dude, because like I didn't know that they weren't fighting for a belt. And as someone that's, I'll probably bet on it. I mean, I'm definitely gonna bet on this since I'm a betting guy. What would you say, like early takes? How do you think it should go?
I think Tank knockout. We see a fight. Here's the thing: Gervonta's a guy who's won. Whether some people will question the legitimacy of it because of what you were saying, how many titles there is in boxing, but regardless, he's a 3-division world champion, and he has. I think there's only been 2 men that have stepped in the ring with him that he hasn't knocked out. His boxing showed. So what was that? December of 2021 was the last time he went to a decision. And his boxing ability showed in that fight. So I'm like, okay, not just do you have a 93% knockout ratio, but you can actually box when you have to. And he's the one that's proven. He's the one that's been in there with world champions. Ryan has never in his career fought one world champion. So it's like, now's the first time, but we don't know. We've never seen him there. Tank's been on this level.
So you'd say there's a bigger step up for
Absolutely.
Ryan? Yeah, you see
more
that.
restrictions too. Ryan's had his last 2 fights at 140. This fight's at 136, so he has to come down a few pounds. There's a rehydration clause as to how much weight he can rehydrate after making the weight the first time, so he has to make weight. They both have to make weight twice. So yeah, I mean, I think I thought Tank knockout before, but I think there's so many limitations that it just solidifies my Tank by knockout pick.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that one too, man.
I mean, and even if you break it down simpler, like Tank has never been necessarily hurt in a fight. He's never shown much vulnerability. Ryan Garcia's been put on his ass before, He's gotten back up and won by knockout, but it's like, okay, so you can go down. It kind of reminds me of one of those things with Canelo and Golovkin. I was one of the people that I'm like, fuck, can Canelo take that power? I really wondered, could Canelo take that power? But it was like, took everything. And we've seen Canelo been hit, but not by anybody by Golovkin. So it's like, we've seen Ryan get hit by somebody less than Tank, and he's been put down.
Different power now.
Yeah, like I said, got back up, won by knockout. So we'll see, man. I'm really thinking Tank by knockout, but I'm excited. I can't wait for that one. I don't go to many fights these days. I'm very selective on what fights I choose to attend in person, but that's one I'll be in the building for.
Yeah, I feel the same way about football, bro. Like, it got to be a specific game for me to go out and see. MMA, I'll probably go to as many events as I could. Okay. Obviously, you want a little bit of a marquee,
right.
make it, or or sometimes there'll be a fighter like one of the fighters that I was telling you about before we started recording, Shavkat Rakhmonov fights at 170. He's undefeated. I've never seen a fighter like this, dude. That's a name for your audience to definitely keep an eye out if they're UFC guys. He'll be fighting for a belt one day. 17-0, 9 by submission, 8 by knockouts. Usually you'll see dudes that are, 13 of the 17 wins are by knockouts or by submission, but to have it be that well balanced is wild. And he was a guy who that was to me the main attraction for that fight. Like, this is a guy that I was high on, so I was really excited to go see. But for the most part, man, it needs to be a special occasion for me to go to like a football game or basketball game of some kind.
Yeah, I think for me, boxing, bro, I've been to over 100 fights.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I've been to over 100 fights.
Yeah, that's like, you've consumed it a lot.
So for me, it's like,
So do you feel with you covering the sports so much that are you still a fan, or do you look at it from a journalist analyst perspective?
yeah, I definitely look at it from a journalistic standpoint now. I've definitely, bro, I was a degenerate. I'm talking about like I was in all these Facebook groups and, I really loved it. I still do. It's just, it's hard. It's hard to love a woman that you know is cheating on you. And it's like, bro, they don't treat us with any sort of respect. They're
Right.
cheating. They're cheating on us in public. I feel like Chloe, when Tristan was like in Greece and shit with another woman and she just had the baby. Like, sometimes that's what it feels like being a boxing fan, bro. 2019, I covered 29 events in 10 months. Each month there was at least one event out of town. I'm not doing that shit no more. You know how much traveling and wear and tear. And it's like for guys that are putting half the effort in, nah. Or for fights that aren't even worth it, that's like you said, it's not really a marquee matchup. Nah.
Yeah, it got to be worth it.
Bro,
If you're going out your way like that and
see,
traveling and taking on those expenses as
I
well.
was traveling like a motherfucker, but for me, it was like mini vacations.
Right.
Never been to Houston before. Go to Houston for a mid. I'm talking about, bro. It was a mid ass fight.
Like free ESPN Plus kind of fight.
Bro, it was like Apex on a Saturday afternoon, not even Sunday night or Saturday night, like the early afternoon.
Yeah, main event is on at 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Bro, it was, but I'm like, yeah, I've never been to Houston, and I loved it, bro. I went through like I kind of would use it as, vacationing, partying. It's like I'm working, but when I'm not, I'm at bottle service at the club. I was the guy that every fight I would go to out of town, I'm bringing sand to the beach. I'm bringing sand to the beach. I'm flying girls out for every fight. Every fight I was traveling to, I'm flying a different girl out. But now it's like, shit.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go to the fight. I'd rather watch it from home, get the better view, save me a couple dollars. And, bro, honestly, it was so tiring. I can't tell you how many times I fell asleep at the airport while my plane was boarding. It just happened to me in January when I went to see Tank in D.C. Plane starts, I fucking fell asleep, bro. Houston, it happened to me that same trip in Houston, fell asleep as my plane was boarding. I'm like, bro, I'm good.
But you know what? That's a cool way to look at it too, where you make it an experience too. You're not just going for the fight. It's going, maybe you never been to Miami.
I
right?
always made an experience, bro. I would have a list of, the restaurants I'm gonna hit up, maybe the bar or the club I'm gonna hit up. Always made it an experience, and I loved it. I enjoyed it, man. Boxing, I thought the military was gonna give me the travel. It's been boxing. It's been sports. New York City, I've probably done 20 times now in the last 5 years. LA, probably like 40 to 50 times in the last 5 years. I stopped counting, bro, but I was at 100 fights around the pandemic, and I've still covered, but the pandemic told me time to chill out, take some time to myself. So I don't really go that much now.
Hey, man, I want to ask you a couple more things before we start to wind down, and I appreciate you having me on the show too. Outside of boxing, what sports you into? I'm a big sports guy. My show is all sports and sports betting, veterans minimum, cheap plug, and I call it like the best sports betting vibe on the internet. I do hyper focus on NBA, NFL, UFC, and like major soccer. Outside of boxing, what's the thing that like you make time to make sure you tune into?
Um, Definitely football. I'm a big football
What's
guy.
your squad?
I'm a Bears fan, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm a Bears fan.
Yo,
So first time ever.
I'm a Justin Fields guy,
Me
man.
too. Me too. I felt that they dropped the ball when they drafted Mitch.
Yeah.
I thought Deshaun Watson, even though people are gonna say time and time again, Patrick Mahomes, everybody knows Deshaun was the
Yeah,
quarterback.
yeah,
That was a guy
absolutely.
coming out, you know.
Right, right, right.
But I'm a Bears fan. I'm a big Notre Dame guy. So typical Rudy story,
Yeah.
legit. And it was so easy for me because we had like free cable. So NBC, I knew I could watch all the Notre Dame games. So I typically don't miss a Bears or Notre Dame game. But definitely now, shout out to Drive to Survive, bro. I've gotten like huge into Formula One. I've started like my own not really podcast, but like my own platform. I'm doing like live race watch alongs and different things. And bro, I'm like super stoked for the race coming out here to Vegas in November. Trying to hit up like 2 other races before that one. So definitely Formula One right now. I think that's probably outside of boxing like the thing I'm focused the most on right now. Obviously football season's done. Um, but recently just started to cover other sports. So gonna start putting more attention on baseball and basketball as well, just trying to really expand. But I watch it all, bro. I'm pretty disgusting. No, seriously, I'm pretty disgusting. I watch it all. Like I want to go check out the new lacrosse. I've never seen lacrosse a day in my life. I want to. They have a look the Desert Dogs, the Las
Yeah, yeah,
Vegas
yeah.
Desert Dogs. I want to go check them out. Um, I've been to the Las Vegas Lights, the minor league soccer team. I love going to their games. Like I'm pretty disgusting when it comes to sports. I watch it all.
Dude, that's I mean, anyone that you talk to that knows me for a long time and like from a young age, they tell you that this kid was gonna do something in sports. Like obviously I wanted to play, right?
Right.
Like every kid
What
did, but
what, baseball, football?
nah, I played soccer growing up and
Okay.
I was really good at soccer, man. Like I was getting scouted at a really
Like
young age.
American good or like soccer
Nah,
good?
like European.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I went overseas a couple times, and then, dude, the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school, I fell in love with football. I mean, like that new side piece. Like I was all in, and I started to play quarterback at my high school. And I often ask people like, what's their biggest regret in life on my show, and someone asked me that one time, and I was like, yo, I would say it's stopping soccer when I did. But then my love for football gave me everything that I'm kind of doing now.
Mm.
Be it moving out from New York and coming to Vegas in September, and I've been out here, and my content is all sports betting and a lot of NFL. NFL is king when it comes to sports betting. So it's like a weird balance scale I'm trying to figure out. Like, is it really a regret that I stopped playing? Because who knows? Maybe I stopped playing when I was 16. Maybe at 19 I blow out a knee and like my
That's
soccer
it,
career
right.
was over. Or you never know. So I don't really regret it. But if I had to pick one, I would probably say that. But then again, I'm giving you so many different answers because I don't know. I feel like
No, I
it's been
feel
the
that. I feel that. I feel the same way because I always tell people in a way my first deployment to Afghanistan saved my life. It was like a real rough time in my life, and I went out there, and maybe after like 2 3 months, I feel like I was where I wanted to be, like within myself, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna invest all this energy into this boxing platform. And I started a channel, and I still have the channel like the logo as my laptop background because I feel that I pushed out. Like, yeah, I got an opportunity with Ness, and so I took it. Then it was like cool, found deployed again. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do my own thing. And then I use the pandemic as an excuse, like, oh, boxing is slow right now, blah, blah, blah. Then I got an opportunity with somebody else. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I took that. And then when I felt like I got everything out of that, I'm like, all right, now I'm really going to do my channel. And then I got an opportunity again with Ness. And it was like, I, I still don't want to say that I regret it, but like sometimes I do because it's always like that what if, like what could have came from that had I've actually went through with it. So that's why I don't regret it, but I get where you're coming from with that for sure.
Yeah, man. With me, like with my show, I've been doing it since 2015. started off with a bunch of other guys, and then through the years, like, one dude got a kid, got married, didn't want to do it. My other friend got his real job, 9 to 5, got a promotion. And then I was like, yo, it's the only thing I love doing. Like, I really just love doing it. I built a pretty loyal and like ride or die kind of audience. And it's not as big as I want it to be. Obviously, everyone would want it to be more, but it's gotten, I use that as a way, like, I know how to edit, I know how to do audio, video, all that stuff. And I've learned so much about in front of the mic, now working behind the mic. And I feel like it's just made me a better host, a better conversationalist, and
Mm.
it's improved me so much. But in the end, like, I'll always do my show because there's no ceiling on it. And it's the reason why I wanted to do content, because hypothetically speaking, I could make 100K this year, but it don't mean that next year is going to be 100K.
Right.
More people will listen, more sponsors. Like, there's no ceiling. And I've never wanted to have a job where it's like, all right, you're only going to make 80K a year.
No, I feel that, man. So when I moved to Vegas, and I know we got to wrap up, but really quick, when I moved to Vegas, being from Chicago, there was no professional sports here. So I'm like, what the fuck? I'm huge on sports. You see it on my laptop. I got the Notre Dame, the Bulls, the Bears, the Sox, the Hawks. So I remember I'd been here a month and 3 days to be exact, and I attended my first fight, and I fell in love that atmosphere. So it was like I just wanted to do it, and once I started doing it, I'm still in the military, and I'm like, yo, I don't want to do this. Like, this is really what I wanted to do, and it's not easy. It's not easy. So definitely commend you and shout out to you because being in sports in general is such a hard thing to maintain. You may get an opportunity, but being able to create opportunities for yourself and keep it going and have like longevity in sports media is such a tough thing to do, man. So definitely can't wait to see everything you have in store with Veterans Minimum.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me too, bro. It was pretty cool when you asked me to come on. So it was a fun chat. I hope your audience enjoys it also.
No, definitely, man. We'll get you back on and see what's new and what you have cooking, see what your thoughts are on some Tank and Ryan bets.
Let's do it.
But give out your social media to your personal and your channel as well.
At Veterans Minimum, all things Veterans Minimum. Like I said, the best sports betting vibe on the internet. And my social media is Nick Dais 10 DAIS. I get Diaz all the time. I disappoint a lot of people because there's a Nick Diaz,
Right.
an icon in MMA, but I'm like, nah, it's the other guy. But at Nick Dais 10 is you can find me.
For sure, man. Well, Ring Walk Danny and the Boxing Voice. Make sure to catch us on the next one. Peace.
What up, YouTube family? Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help us get to that 1,000,000 subscribers. We're on the road to 1,000,000. And obviously, we have other great content on our Patreon channel. So since this video is over, head on over to our Patreon and check out all the exclusive content or right here on our YouTube members. What up, YouTube family? Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help us get to that 1,000,000 subscribers. We're on the road to 1,000,000. And obviously, we have other great content on our Patreon channel. So since this video is over, head on over to our Patreon and check out all the exclusive content or right here on our YouTube members.